Hello, everyone, and welcome to this adult mentor video chat. We have 5 mentors this hour, and we have 5 mentors coming in the next hour. So you're going to hear from 10 mentors today. They will be answering all your questions. Feel free to start dropping those questions in the comments. And hey, Danny, I just wanted to point out, Danny will be helping us out today with moderation in the chat, just looking out for spam and harassment. So thank you, Danny, for doing that. And then Lee Marr, our Assistant Social Media Director at Pitch Wars, is going to be on the Twitter account today, like bringing us any questions from Twitter, and also just like making sure everyone knows where the chat is, and also tweeting some quotes out from it. So, and I'm going to have all the mentors introduce themselves. So we'll start with Alicia.
Hi, I'm Alicia Thompson. I'm co-mentoring this year in adult romance specifically with Amy Lee. I have a book coming out in July 2022. I can't even remember what year it is, frankly, with Berkeley. And Amy has a book coming out in May 2022 with Berkeley.
And this is your first year mentoring for Pitch Wars, right?
Yes, it is.
Cool. All right, Michella.
Hello, I am Michella. I'm really excited to be back and mentoring this year. It's my second year, and I was a mentee in 2015. I work at Scholastic in licensed publishing. And yeah, this year I'm looking for fantasy, historicals, romance, and women's fiction.
All right, let's go with Mia.
All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Mia P. Manansala. I use she, her pronouns. This is my 4th year mentoring in Pitch Wars, but it's my first year mentoring solo. The previous years, I mentored with my own mentor from 2017, Kelly Garrett. But this year, she's letting me, fly free, leave the nest. My debut cozy mystery, Arsenic. I never had the book with me, but it's right there. Arsenic and Adobo came out in May of this year, and the sequel, Homicide and Halo Halo, comes out in February of next year.
It's so good. It's so funny. All right, Jackson.
Before I introduce myself, can I just say that Arsenic and Adobo is a great fucking title. It's really cool. Hi, I am Jackson Ford. I'm a first-time mentor and adult mentor this year. I am the author of The Frost Files, the first book of which is The Girl Who Could Move Shit With Her Mind, and the series has its shitty sequels as well. Book number 4 is out next year.
All right, Rochelle.
There we go. Hi, I'm Rochelle Karina. I was a 2018 Pitch Wars mentee, and I run the Pitch Wars blog, and was a mentor for the first year last year, so couldn't resist coming back again. Really excited. I mentor adult, and I have a giant list of genres I take, mostly romance, horror, and thrillers. So that's it.
Yeah. All right. A couple notes. Danny did point out Wishlist go live today. So yes, they do. They go live at 10 p.m. Eastern today. So look out for that. Our mentors today, as you may have noticed, will be able to mention their wish list. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it today, but if they need to, they can. So, and then we're also, by the way, not going to take anything like pre-pitches. So if you're like, would you be interested in my, book about mermaids in space or whatever, we won't be answering those kind of questions. All right. So we have a first question from Jesse, and it is on genre. My book, Sex, Drugs, and Bipolar, takes place in the 1970s. It's a coming-of-age story tracking its main character from 14 to 24. I can't figure out what genre applies. Is 1971 old enough to be historical? I will say 1990s are historical at this point. So
yeah, 1990 was 30 years ago. Jesus.
Anybody else want to jump in on the genre?
Absolutely, 1971 is old enough to be historical. That is, anything over 25 years generally can count as historical. A coming-of-age story can either go new adult or young adult, but at going up to age 24, you're edging into adult territory. So I honestly think that you could just go historical drama, if it's sex, drugs, and bipolar, or is it meant to be lighthearted?
All right. Any other comments before we go to the next one? All right, cool. Hello, mentors. What to do about comps? Is it best to put at the very top of your query or start with the hook and combine in the same paragraph, or at the end after the bio? Any preferences?
I'll jump in on this one if that's okay. I don't know if there's a best. I don't know if there's kind of a global sort of best method, but for me, certainly, I like it to come at the end. I want to be hooked by the story straight away. I am interested in comps, but I'm interested in them as kind of a subsequent thing. I want to hear about your story, and I want to hear what's cool about your story first before I start thinking about any other books.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, when it comes to like agent time querying, every agent has their own. Some prefer their housekeeping at the very top with, the word count and like the comms at the very top. Some prefer. So again, that's personal preference. But like in general, especially for something like this, we are looking for what your story is, as Jackson said. Like, what is it? How are we getting drawn in? I want that feeling of like, I need to read this. I need to get to those pages. I can't wait. I don't think a bad comp can definitely negatively affect you, but where it's placed necessarily, I don't think will. And when I say bad comp, I mean like, oh, you promised me X and I'm reading and I'm not getting that. And you got me all hyped up because I was like, oh my God, I love X. And then you're like, no. So I would say comps are important, but they're not the most important. And like placing, I would not like there's so many other things that are stressful about this business. Where you put them in a query is really not that serious, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's funny, Mia, you mentioned a bad comp. I remember back when we kind of started Pitch Wars, almost so many sci-fi entries were comping Firefly. And what they meant was like it takes place on a small spaceship, which like if you've ever seen Firefly, like that's not why you watch Firefly, right? And so yeah, definitely keep an eye on that. It was definitely giving like I was like, oh, this is gonna be kind of a funny, against the establishment kind of story, and it was not. So. All right. Danny asks, what would be your ideal collaborative mentor style? What is your communication method? If you just want to each talk about kind of what you think your mentor style is going to be like this year. And yeah.
I can, sorry. Okay. I definitely am hoping to be very collaborative with my future mentee. I mean, this is your story, and I'm just here to kind of help you out, be a sounding board, give you advice. But at the end of the day, every choice that's made will be the mentees. And yeah, I think mentorship and writing and working with critique partners is all very collaborative. But at the end of the day, the writer knows the story best and has their vision, and the mentorship is all about helping you get your vision onto the page. And my communication style, it's hard for me to kind of know right now because I'm definitely going to tailor it to, again, like what my mentee prefers. So I'm just going to be very flexible and do everything that I can to match the way that my mentee wants to work.
I can piggyback on that and agree 100%. This is a partnership. It's absolutely the writer's story. And my role is to help guide that writer through a series of choices to make their manuscript better. That's really what it's about. But in the end, it is their story. And for me, it's all about preserving the writer's voice. My background is in editorial, so writer voice is so key and so important that my role is simply, here, let me help you find a way to make it better. Communication style, I'm hard of hearing, so I like text, I like email, I like everything digital because it's fun and it's easy to communicate. But like Michella said, a lot of that is going to depend on what the mentee needs, and it's just going to change.
Yeah, so I, again, not to, but like everyone's right. Like this is your story, and so there are like two things that I feel like every mentor, a few potential mentee needs to know. One, what are some of the things you are not willing to budge on? Right? What are some things you're like, this is the heart of my story, and if you change this, it's not the same. Like you need to know that, right? You can't, because everyone's just like, because when we ask, questions to like potential mentees, we're always, one of the main things I ask is like, what is something you don't want to change? And some people want to seem like they're really easy to work with. They're like, oh, everything is up for grabs, I'm willing to budge on anything, anything is up for discussion. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, I want to change this, and they're like, no. And that's fine, because then it's your story. So know what your story is and what you cannot change without changing the essence of it, right? And then two, be open to feedback, because sometimes there are things that you think you're not willing to budge on. And as you are, hey kitty, and as you are revising, sometimes the essence of your story changes. There was something back when I was a mentee in 2017, I told Kelly, I refuse to change this, this, and this. And she was like, okay, cool. I have feelings about that third one, but we'll address it when it comes to that. And as I started revising, I was like, she's right. And I didn't love that she was right, because I had my heart set on one particular thing, but you have to do what's right for the story. And that goes as a mentor, as a mentee. So knowing those kinds of things, like, and again, it's a collaborative process. So what was I going to say? Well, okay, but moving on to communication style, I'm really cool with like Facebook Messenger DMs, Twitter DMs, Instagram. If that's what you like, I can do texts. Obviously, video calls are really popular now, and I'm good with that because a lot of brainstorming is easier. Just speaking face to face and having to send a million messages back and forth where like context is lost. I hate phone calls. Don't you ever call me. This is in my wish list, by the way. Like that's how serious I am. Like if you call me, you better be telling me that I won the lottery or that someone has died and we need to talk, because like otherwise I don't need a phone call. My anxiety goes through the roof whenever my phone rings. So that is not the way to communicate with me. But other than that, I'm very hands-on. I mean, obviously boundaries are important, but if there's something you need to talk through, there are going to be a lot of, I know I'm monopolizing this, but I'm sorry. I just like having been through this before, there are so many highs and lows of this process. It is a very intense time period. And sometimes sometimes it's not like editing feedback that you need, but just like cheerleading. And I'm here for that, right? I know how hard this can be. So like if you're like, I don't think I can do this, why did I think anyone want to read my story? Hit me up. I will talk you through it and I will let you know I love you. I love your story. I think you have something to say. That's also what I'm here for. It's not just the writing portion that a mentor can provide for you. There are other aspects as well.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, Mia, because that's something that Amy and I are very excited about too, is providing the cheerleading portion of it, not just the editorial feedback. And our communication style, it's pretty open. It's kind of depending on the mentee and what they want. But definitely like a group email, group text, group phone call, anything like that, so that you're getting attention kind of from both of us at the same time. And yeah, I mean, I understand sometimes you just kind of need to be left alone a bit and kind of work on your stuff, and you want to come back, later and be like, look at what I did, and what do you think of this? And that's totally cool. Sometimes you need, a little bit more kind of, one-on-one kind of close attention while you're working through something. Sometimes you just want to talk and you just kind of want to say like, it was a really hard writing day for me today, and here's why. And we're all writers, so that's something that we all really relate to, and we all kind of want to talk about all the time. I just want to talk about writing all the time. So yeah.
Just to pick up very quickly on something I think Mia said, like, we're not gods, the mentors. We're not kind of handing down diktats from on high. We want you to raise something if you don't agree with it. If we say something and you're thinking, no, that's bullshit, it's totally fine to bring that up with us and to say, no, this is important to me and I think you're wrong and here's why. We want to work with you. We're not above you. We want to bring out the best version of your story, and that can only happen if there's open communication and it goes both ways. So like, if we are going down the wrong path, you need to tell us as much as we need to tell you.
All right. Mia, I laughed when you said about the phone call because I just saw a TikTok that was like how to talk dirty to millennials, and one of them is like, you'll never have to call me. I was like, yes, that's a good one. All right. Jennifer asked, any advice for picking the best mentor to apply to? Clearly a newbie here. My work is, we don't need to go into that. Advice on picking a best mentor to apply to.
Yeah, I'll dive in on that because I'm not shy. And thank you, by the way. I get to cuss because somebody just said bullshit. And yes. Honestly, the best thing you can do is start with your age category and your genre and look for your mentors who are accepting those. Read the wish lists because we're very, very clear. Like some of us are really wordy. We're very, very clear about what we're looking for, what we're not looking for, what excites us, what we're open to. Start there and start narrowing your list down. When you get down to a little short list, Twitter stalk. Seriously, most of us are active on Twitter and we're participating in a lot of things. There's a forum that you can also, most of the mentors have an Ask Mentor thing. And the other thing that I would actually say is most of us are open to answering questions that are not, don't pitch obviously, but most of us are very open to discussing, would you take a type thing. Ask, we're people. We're not gods handing down dictates from on high. That was brilliant, by the way. Thank you.
So I applied to Pitch Wars twice, and spoiler alert, I did not get in either time. But I will say that going through the wish list and picking mentors was actually kind of one of my favorite parts. I found it really fun. And what I did when I did it was I went through and I just like, Rochelle was saying, I basically first looked at just kind of who represents my category, who, and kind of narrow it down to like, literally, these are the, 13 mentors that would even take my stuff and even say that they're interested in my stuff. So right away, I've eliminated a lot of people. And then I would start looking at kind of the vibe of their wish list. Like, what books do they say that they like? What tropes do they seem like they're into? How do their books sound? I did read a lot of mentor books when I was applying. You obviously don't have to. I got a lot of them from the library too, so it's not like I spent a ton of money. And that was actually a really fun part because I really liked reading other people's work and kind of seeing like what they're about. I definitely did Twitter stalk and kind of see like, do these seem like people I would want to, kind of have in my DMs all the time, like telling me stuff, do they seem like people that would be fun to kind of talk to? And I had a friend who was doing Pitch Wars at the same time, and that was kind of invaluable because we would actually look at each other's wish lists and look at each other's mentors and stuff, and that was a lot of fun. So I would text her and I'd be like, oh my God, you have to go with this person. She just tweeted this. And it was actually kind of fun to stalk somebody else's mentors that they wanted and kind of feed them information. So that was something we did as well.
Like, this is my first time being involved in Pitch Wars in any capacity. And one of the things that has impressed me about the whole process, and Sarah, I think this is a credit to you and your team, is just how open it is. Like, you can ask any question and chances are at any forum, and chances are you'll get multiple answers from multiple people. There are no sort of secret judging boards here. Nobody's going to hide anything. There's no cloak and dagger. It's all very much out in the open. So if you're not sure and you're looking, if you're not sure about which mentor to pick and you've got specific questions, just ask them. You will absolutely get answers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Richie. And speaking of that, so like if you are gonna ask a question, one thing I like, you don't have to, because I understand sometimes you get a little shy and you'd rather do it privately, but if you can, share it publicly, like on Twitter. So because if you have that question, chances are at least one other person has a similar question, and it would be really, really helpful for them to get that information as well. So again, like, I understand maybe you have something very private that you don't want to share publicly. My DMs are open, you can, but open questions are usually the best because it helps multiple people. Yeah, and absolutely, one of the best things about Pitch Wars is that it does prepare you for working in the publishing industry. So it's just like the way you would research an agent, right? So again, you're like, I'm not even going to look at the middle grade because I didn't write a middle grade book. So like so you said like you do the categories, and then you're like, well, only X amount of people even mention my genre. So and then you do really specific ones, because just because people take your genre, like again, like I'm a mystery writer, but mystery is huge, right? And there are multiple mystery mentors who are taking very, very different things from me because I'm looking for specific things. So pay attention to what those wish lists says. And if there's a no, like I do not want this, please respect that. It's not a judgment on you. It's like, let me put that out there. It is not a judgment on you, what you're into or what you're writing. It's just that some people have very specific skill sets, and I know I cannot help you with this. You would be wasting a pick on me. I'm sorry. I wouldn't want you to do that. And then two, particularly if they're like trigger warning things I don't want, please be respectful of that, because there's a reason I'm saying I don't want these things, right? And again, like those wish lists help because, as I said, you only get, I think, 4. You don't want to throw that away. Every single year, I'm not joking, every single year I've gotten at least 2 memoirs. And I'm like, I'm a fiction writer who only takes mystery. Did you just like my name and you just randomly clicked one on the list? So it's like, so do your research, because yes, it's free, but why would you throw away a pick when there are so many amazing, amazing mentors out there who are the right fit for you?
I would echo all of that. I think you've all said amazing, spot on things. I would just like to add that I think it's important to consider everyone who does obviously take your age category and genre seriously. I think it's human nature to get hung up on things like reputation and prestige. I mean, I know I did it personally, like when I was looking at colleges, right? Everyone who is a mentor is at different stages of their career. They're at different places. They all know different things. And so anyone that has like a marker of what success looks like, or who a good mentor would be that has like a certain experience you're kind of looking for, I would just say kind of like consider everyone seriously, look at their wish list, and don't just eliminate anyone because they don't have a certain accolade or they're not at a place that you think they should be, if that makes sense.
Oh, sorry. One more thing, because I was focusing so specifically on wish list. I forgot to talk about the mentor style. Really take that into account, because we all learn and take feedback differently, right? Like I say I'm hands-on, and for some people that's wonderful. For other people that can be like stifling, right? Like you're like, I don't know. Some people are like, oh my God, did you just message me again? I'm fine. I'll message you when I'm, and like, that's fair. Right. And then other people, are like, hey, did my mentor like forget about me? I haven't heard from them in like a month. And it's not that the mentor doesn't care. It's just like they have a hands-off style and they're trusting you to work through it. And they're trusting you to ask them a question if you have one. Right. And a lot of times you can kind of glean those things from the wish list, because we say what our communication or revision style is like. I'm going to make y'all do outlines. I don't care. Deal with it, right? If you're not willing to do that, you should not apply to me. That's all I'm going to say, right? So again, those things are out there, because it's not just, oh wow, she's an adult mystery mentor, awesome. Do we mesh together? Will we work well together? Again, we're going to say it a million times: collaborative process. If the way I work is not the best fit for you, it doesn't make me a bad mentor. It doesn't make you a bad mentee. We're just not good together. That's all it is.
All right. Y'all reminded me of a couple of things I didn't say at the beginning, so I'm going to say them now. If you don't know what Pitch Wars is, or if you want to learn more about it, go to pitchwars.org. We have a whole bunch of information on there. There's like a ton of questions on there. I will say like 90% of the questions we get on Twitter are answered on the website. So go check out the website. And we are also doing right now critiques. We're doing a critique series where the mentors, past and present, have critiqued queries and first pages, so you can get an idea of what some of them, what their process looks like. And for commenting or contacting mentors, we basically ask that you respect whatever they say. So if they haven't said, you can DM me, don't DM them. If they haven't said you can email me, don't email them. But if they have said it, then feel free to do that. And every mentor is a little bit different in what they want. So just, check. Most of them will put on their wish list specifically how you can reach out to them. And then also today we're getting a lot of questions that are very, very specific to that person's book. And we're going to deprioritize those because we want this chat to be as helpful to as many people as possible. So if you do have a very specific question about your book, feel free to reach out during one of the Twitter chats, and then you can get a whole bunch of mentors' responses on that. All right. V asked, in terms of the manuscript word count, do you have an upper and lower limit that you'll consider?
I'll pick us up. Not really. I think if pushed, I'd say sort of minimum 50,000, maximum 150,000. I think, every book has the word count that it's most comfortable at. And I think to put limits on that early on is a little bit of a mistake. Obviously, if you've got like a 200,000 or 250,000 word book, then yeah, I mean, that's a pretty big job. But generally, not really. I'd be curious to know if any of the other mentors here have any thoughts on that.
I actually can piggyback on that and say it sort of depends on the genre. If you are 30 or 40,000 or more above genre standard, that's a lot to trim in the short period. Likewise, if you're 30 or 40,000 below the genre standard, that's a lot to build up. So part of it is we have this very short period of time to work in, and I have to feel like we can work together to bring your manuscript into genre standards. So if you're 20 to 30,000 off, either way, give or take, that's totally doable. Anything more than that, it's not a hard no, but I'm going to be really looking at what it needs. Hope that helps.
That's a much more coherent answer than mine. Thank you.
Yeah. No, it makes Rochelle's done this before, and like that's again, it's not necessarily like, oh, is this bad? It's just, can it be done in the amount of time that we have, that both you, because again, everyone has their own responsibilities and and needs and things like that. Can this person put in the time and effort that's needed to get it to where it needs to be? Right? Like if you send me like a 40,000 word thing, I'm like, I'm an underwriter, but like that's like a 30, 40,000 words in less than 3 months, and they'd have to be good ones, right? Because we want them polished for it's not just, oh, we get a draft done. Like we need it polished by the end. And that's the issue. A lot of times the book that we choose is the one that, like spoiler, behind the scenes, the way I choose it at least is, what is the book that I can help the most in the time that I have, right? Because I can love a book and not know how to help you, all right? And then it would be a shame for me to take you on because I wouldn't be pushing you along. I can love a book and be like, this is going to take a while, best of luck to you. Maybe I'll reach out to you, but like, I can't do that in what I have. I only have this X amount of time, as do you. And so I'm going to choose the one that sets us for the highest rate of success in that area.
All right. Do any of y'all remember when we had like 4 weeks for the editing period? That was a lot. Okay.
4 weeks?
Yeah. Oh man, those are the days. Okay. Some of you already answered this. I think Mia especially has answered this, but I'm going to ask in case there's anything you want to add. What are your mentoring styles? Like what kind of editing support? Are you more developmental, coaching style? That kind of stuff. Anybody?
Am I the not shy one here, I guess? I'm just the mouthy one. For me, a lot of it really depends on the mentee because I spent most of my career as an editor. So I look at what do you need? But like Mia said, and I think Michella said, I'm a big cheerleader. I have a ginormous mom cheerleader streak going on. So I'm going to be over here going, yay, you wrote a book, woo! But I'm also a lot of hard work. But it's going to be fun. So my big thing is, at the end of this, I want us to still be friends. So I'm going to be the one going, I'm that person who's going to ask you to give me the most, but I'm going to be right there holding you up the whole way through it. And what that means is different to every single person. And that really depends on what you need as a writer and what your book needs revision and editing wise. And I know that's vague as fuck, but it is what it is.
Excuse me. For me, I'd say I'm not here to fuck with the language and rhythm of your story. I'm not here to line edit. What I'd like to do is take a bit of a bird's eye view and go, okay, so how can we make the story match your vision for it? How can we bring this to its best possible conclusion? I'm going to ask hard questions, and I'm going to make comments you might not like. I'm not going to shy away from the fact that I'm going to make you work your ass off, but I'm doing it from a place of, let's bring this story together. Let's bring it to the best possible place it can be.
I definitely agree with what's been said. I think a lot of like what we're talking about will be more specific once we actually have a manuscript that we've chosen and know what it needs and can figure out how we can best help it. But in general, I think I'm very straightforward. I'll tell you everything that I love in excruciating detail and cheer you on. And I will also be very honest and forthright with what I think isn't working, where I think things aren't working, but I'm always going to be open to what the mentee wants to do. Like, I will have suggestions on how I think that things can be fixed, but I also know that sometimes where I think the issue isn't actually where the issue is. And like through communicating and just talking about the story, even the mentee sometimes is the one to figure out, actually, I think if I change this, it'll fix the issue that you're talking about, which is something that, you know, you learn the more you write, the more you revise, the more you like build your craft. And so, yeah, I'm just going to be very straightforward and supportive, and we're going to figure it out together.
Yeah, I totally agree. And at some point, it's just a conversation. And so it's like, you know, it's not necessarily, you know, Amy and I telling you stuff about your manuscript so much as asking questions about it and saying like, you know, what are the stakes for the character in this scene? Like, why is, you know, she reacting the way that she's reacting? What would happen if, you know, this was more of a factor at this point in the story? What would happen if you revealed this secret, you know, later and kind of teased it out more, like stuff like that. And so it's a lot of collaboration, like everyone's saying. It kind of depends on the mentee and the manuscript and, you know, what's required. But we definitely have talked about doing like more developmental, big picture stuff, and then maybe, you know, time permitting, getting, you know, more into some of the line edit stuff, not necessarily to change, you know, the way that you write, but just to kind of, you know, start asking like, you know, could this scene be punched up more? Could the dialogue be, you know, a little snappier? Could the, you know, start working on it on a little bit more of a sentence level?
And one thing I just want to add about mine, because like, again, everyone is right, because different books do have different needs. So I only want to say this because I did say I was a cheerleader, and I am. But when it comes to like me leaving like feedback in the manuscript or giving you my edit letter, I'm not super effusive. I am not a gusher. I like the highest praise you'll get. It's like I'll highlight a line and be like, I like this. And again, it's not that I don't love it. It's just I've realized over time some people are like, oh, it's all feedback, it's all critical, it's all critique. Like, oh no, that's because like this is this, and then when we talk, I can tell you, you know, XYZ. I really love this, but I'm trying to help you fix it. But again, I'm trying to get better at that. You know, less tough love, more like, well, you need to know what you do well to keep on doing that well. But like, again, if you ever get feedback from me and she's like, I don't see like a single compliment, it's not you, it's me, it's my Asian upbringing. We don't get praise, we get backhanded compliments, you know, not bad. So.
I feel like I'm the same way, but I think I blame mine on my military father. But I always say like the more critique I have for you, the more I love the story, because if I didn't like the story, I wouldn't put in the time. All right. Anna asked if she can submit to my cat. And Danny suggested she submit to my dog instead. Yeah, my cat is a parrot. She likes to sit on my shoulder sometimes. Let's see. Where are we at? Jennifer asked, how do we handle credentials in the query letter if we don't have writing specific credentials? I have a master's degree in an unrelated field. Is that worth mentioning?
I'm going to say something that might be a little bit unpopular. I don't care. Not to throw shade on your credentials at all, not to throw shade on your hard-won expertise. I'm interested in exactly one thing with the query, which is I want to know about the story. Well, two things, some comp books at the end would be helpful, but mostly at that point, I want to know what cool idea you've had that you've turned into a story. Unless like your credential is absolutely essential to the story you're telling, personally for me, I don't care. Sorry.
Nailed it. We can talk about that, credentials and everything when it comes to querying for agents, because that's a little different. But for pitch wars, I'm with him. I don't care. Doesn't matter. Unless it is absolutely relevant to the story, don't care.
I mean, like, even when it comes to age, like I had 0 things published when I got my agent. I had zero things published until this year. When I had pitch wars. So again, padding your bio, you're really just adding extra words that like agents see so many in a single day. Like some can go through over 100 in just one day. You really want to keep it kind of really like clean and streamlined as possible. Again, unless like Jackson, unless it's like it's really, really relevant. It's like a friend, if you are writing a STEM romance and you have a PhD in that, like, oh, okay, you are bringing your experiences to the field. That's fascinating. We know you have expertise in this. My bachelor's in English is not gonna excite anyone. Like it's not. It doesn't bring anything to the table. It doesn't show that I have expertise in anything. It's not related at all. So I mean, like if you have if you're part of like professional writing organizations, like, so I had joined some, like, so like, again, I'm a Mr. So like Mr. Writers of America, Sisters in Crime is amazing. International things like that. Like you can maybe mention it to show that you're like, I'm serious about this. I joined a professional organization. If you've won big contests, right? Like not, $25 from your local one that no one's ever heard of, you can do that. But again, if you haven't, keep it pretty spare. It's not a huge deal. It's not a deal breaker. I can say that much.
Yeah, I always say the book is the thing. The book is the only thing. But to your point of like, if it's relevant to the story. So I have a degree in mechanical engineering, which I mentioned in my bio because it's fun. Like people react to it, but we've never mentioned it while pitching a book to someone, right? Until this last book that went out where my main character builds battle bots. And so we added that I have a degree in engineering and that I was part of an engineering sorority. So yeah, the book is the most important thing. All right, we have a procedural question I'm just going to answer real quick. Should the query letter we submit with our pitch war submissions be personalized, tailored to the mentor? So it actually says on our submission FAQ, do not personalize your letter to the mentors. All 4 mentors get the same letter, and we specifically ask you not to personalize it. So don't worry about that. Don't stress about that. It is not expected. All right. So Nikki asked if you could kind of draw the line between YA and adult, especially knowing that few agents are actually looking for new adult.
For me, YA is more stories where teens are really the focus of the story. They're the POV character, and it really is very immediate. It's like the teen and their teen experience. Whereas adult is, I mean, obviously, if you have an adult POV character, your main character is an adult, it's probably an adult book at that point. And even if you have a teen protagonist or a teen kind of POV, if it feels more kind of like retrospective or, kind of like all those books like, Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime or The Girls by Emma Cline, or I'm trying to think of different books off the top of my head, but those books to me, they don't feel as YA because they don't feel as immediate to the teen experience. And just kind of ask yourself, like, who's the audience for this book? Who do you see kind of primarily reading it? Obviously, you know, teens can read adult books, adults read teen books. It's not like they're mutually exclusive. But if you're seeing yourself like, oh, I would take this on a school visit and I talk to high school students about it, you know, I mean, that's more of a teen book probably. Whereas if you're seeing it more like this is like literary fiction, you know, then that's, you know, probably leaning more adult. There's literary YA books too, but you know what I mean? I'm trying to make kind of simplistic divisions.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to do a real quick one here. I think one thing that is easy to kind of draw the line on is if this is a coming of age story of any sort, you are probably skewing to the YA side. If it is a dealing with adult situations that is not about, as was said, not about the teen experience, not about the immediate teen experience, you're probably skewing more towards the adult side then. I do take NA if it skews to the adult side, and that's again, look at where that book would be shelved. Does it belong on a shelf that would be recommended to high school students? If so, you're probably looking YA. If not, then you're probably skewing more adult. And I don't think the age of the protagonist is necessarily the determiner there.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. The age, I mean, like, age can be the easiest one. Like, is your protagonist a teenager? You know, that's an easy way, but at the same time, there, you know, like, again, like Sweetness at the Bottom of the Pie, I think Flavia DeLuce is like 12, but it's not a middle grade novel, it's an adult novel, right? So again, there's like tone and voice and like what themes are you tackling, because there are very specific like themes. Like, again, like anyone who thinks like, oh, YA, just make them 16 and you can change your, like, that's not what a YA novel, anyone who says that does not read contemporary YA, because that it's so much more than just an age range. So I guess that's also like my suggestion is like, if you are not widely read in either of those, kind of pick like this is where comps are helpful actually. Like, again, like I kind of poo-pooed comps earlier, but like this is one of those just like, well, thinking of what's out there within the last 5 to 10 years, because we need to know what's selling now. What would you comp it to? What book? Again, it doesn't have to be a one-to-one match. It's like, what themes are similar, what settings are like are that match it really well, the vibes, the atmosphere, that kind of thing are things you can also look for. Because again, yeah, like I said, like it's not just you know, like if it's like, is it set in college and that's why you're confused, because that's a really tough sell. Like, I know Gloria Chow, her books are marked YA, but she writes slightly younger sounding protagonists. So when you read it, you're not like, oh, this is not a mature college student, you know, dark, like you're like, oh no, this is definitely skewing for a YA audience. So again, kind of reading those that are set around there can also kind of help you with that.
I put a link in the comments. My last article that I wrote for Book Riot was actually on the history and future of new adult. And so there's a lot of, I think it's a really good article. I spent a lot of time on it. So but yeah, there's some of that conversation going on there. So you might want to check that out. But I heard a while back someone say, I don't remember who it was, but you can tell the same story and make it young adult or make it adult. And they said that the difference was the filter. Like if you are telling the story as the teen, like experiencing it as a teen versus like looking back on the story as an adult. And I thought that was a really good test. I have a question for y'all that is not from the comments, but I think is always really illustrative and a good thing for potential mentees to hear. What are some of your editing strengths? And also what are some of the things that you're really good at? So for example, I would say mine are plot and pacing. And some of the things that I'm not so good at is like internalization and setting, right? So if y'all want to go around the clock and answer that.
So I'll try to answer for Amy as well, even though obviously she's not here. But I think she and I both are really good at character, kind of asking like, what are the stakes for the character? What's the internal conflict? What's the external conflict? That kind of thing. I think we're really good at dialogue. We definitely are, we're both romance writers. So that's kind of why our wish list asked for kind of romance or women's fiction with like a strong romantic plot, because we think that that's something that we're strong with, is like tension and, all that kind of stuff. As far as weaknesses, I know we kind of put this in our wish list as well, which will go live tonight. But one thing that we kind of said is that depending on if it's, say, like a retelling or something, we don't always know that we're gonna know like all the different things you're doing with it. So that's something that we were a little just wanting to kind of mention. But yeah, that's basically us.
I think that I excel with plot structures. I find them really interesting, and I remember being, a young, newish writer, just like starting to like write stories and having no idea that like plot structure was a real thing. It always felt like, oh, so what's going to happen now? And you're just making it up as you go along. And then I remember getting into Pitch Wars in 2015 and my mentors being like, so I'm going to introduce you to what a beat sheet is. And being like, wow, there's there's a formula. Obviously, it's not a perfect formula, and not every story, conforms to the same, like the 3-act structure or the 5-act structure. But there are tools that you can use to help kind of like organize a story or thoughts or where things should happen. And so I am fascinated with stuff like that. And so I think that's a strength of mine. And then for a weakness, I think that I struggle with like atmosphere and setting. It's something that I kind of end up like building in later. But I think that it's easier to notice stuff like that in other people's writing. Like as a mentor, you can read something and be like, oh, the atmosphere is like not super strong here. And so while it can be a weakness for like the writer personally, sometimes it's easier to just see those things in other people's writing and like call attention to it, even if you struggle doing it yourself too.
I guess we're going around the clock. Strengths for me are character arc. That is my biggest one. Continuity. I'm going to be the one going, wait, their eyes were blue back there. And worse than that. And tension. Because my primary areas of writing are romance, horror, and thrillers, tension is a big, big, big thing for me. So those are the things to me that are my biggest strong points. My weakness, despite being an editor, I detest line editing. I will happily tell you that this is awkward, or this phrasing is weird, or this doesn't come across the way I think it should, but I am highly unlikely to go along and tell you that you dropped a comma or have a dangling participle or any of those other things, because I hate doing it. But I still will make sure that there's clean prose at the end. That's it.
So if we end up working together as mentor and mentee, and your manuscript has action scenes or fight scenes in it, you are going to have the most king hell amazing action scenes in your book. I'm really fucking good at that. I'm also going to make sure that no one forgets your characters. Your characters are going to be awesome. But I'm definitely not perfect, and one of my major weaknesses is overall pacing. Sometimes I'm a little tone deaf, and I see this in my writing as well, my own writing as well. I'm a little tone deaf to when things should slow down or when they should speed up. So yeah, I'm definitely not perfect, but action scenes and fight scenes and character, come work with me. We're going to make them great.
Yeah, I'm jealous about that because I'm always just like, oh God, like your hand goes like, that's why I can't write kissing scenes or fighting scenes. I'm always just like, okay, so if you're standing here and okay. So that's a weakness for me. If you have a lot of kissing and super action scenes, I'm not awesome at those. Anything with description, I'm really just not great at. Even my editors, they'll randomly get like my manuscript and it'll like bracket insert description, because those are the last things that go in. The things I always focus on, which I guess are my strengths, would be like character development, how character drives plot. because I am big on character development and plot structure. And those usually seem like opposite things, but really it's your character who decides what your story is. And so making sure your character is really solid, that they know what they want, that there's like an arc and a journey, and that it's tied deeply to the plot, and that there's that the structure is in place. Those are things that I'm pretty good at. Dialogue, I'm pretty good at. So many times, like, you're gonna hear me say, like, read your dialogue out loud. Please read your dialogue. You're gonna hear that a lot from me, because, you know, yes, like not all writing translates you know, it's not a one-to-one, but at the same time, if you say your sentences out loud, you can usually, it feels strange in your mouth when it's not quite right. So I'll be doing that as well. And I'm also a little bit better, like, if you're a more humorous writer, like not super slapstick, I'm not writing like a Carl Hyacin, but like if you have humor interwoven, I'm pretty good at that. Anything that's really dark and bleak, it's not really my jam. I don't know how to help you like really hone those emotions in. So yeah, character, plot, humor, dialogue.
Awesome. All right, so this will probably be our final question, depending on how fast y'all answer it, but I think it's a fun one. If you had to pitch to a fellow mentor, who would you choose to pitch to? And after this convo, I'm pitching to Jackson, so who wants to go next?
Well, since I was tagged, I'll go next. Mia, you want to work on my shit?
Like, perfect. You will make all the killing in my books just like, just like super awesome. I would love that. We'll just
form like Voltron. This will be amazing.
Yes.
Anybody else?
This is so hard because I don't know who's mentoring what yet, really. Like, everyone doesn't know each other's wish list, really. Even though I'm not a mystery writer, I think I would pitch to Mia because she's so cool, and I loved Arsenic and Adobo. As a Filipino American, I was like very excited to have it coming out. And then I also know that Jessie, the author of Dial A for Aunties, is mentoring this year, and that's another book I loved. So based on, those are not the reasons to pick a mentor at all, but I don't know, right, what everyone's wish list is yet. So on purely superficial reasons, that's why.
She's right. We don't really know everybody's wish list yet. So I'm like going, all of them? You know, everybody. It would also depend on who, what type of book I was writing. But Anna, yeah, colleague, just because she and I get along so well on Twitter and we have such similar wish lists, she would be really fun for me to pitch to. So if I had to pick one, that would be her.
Mm-hmm.
I would say if I were a mystery writer, I would definitely pitch Mia because I also loved Arsenic and Adobo. And also Jessie's book.
Get in line.
I know. Well, now I'm not going to pick her because she's too popular. But I will also say, since I did pitch several mentors who are doing it again last year, that I would definitely pitch Anna Kaling again. I just had a blast. I just thought like her Twitter was the most fun to stalk. I mean, it was just a blast just to pitch her. So I had a good experience with that, even though I wasn't picked.
Yeah. All right. Also, like all of the middle grade mentors, I don't know what it is, but like all of our middle grade mentors are so calming and I love talking to them.
The middle grade mentors are so lovely.
They're so good.
I'm like, I work in youth services at the library. So like my dream is to someday write middle grade. So like if the day ever comes, I'm like, oh, Pitch Wars middle grade mentors, y'all are the best.
Yeah. All right. So I don't think we have time to answer the next question because I think it's going to be one that y'all need to spend a little bit of time on. But can we finish off with, I'm going to have each of you say your very succinct best query letter tip, right? So try to keep it to like 3 sentences or less. And then also where we can find you online.
Okay, so I guess my best query letter tip would be not to be afraid to let your voice come out, not to be afraid to get kind of a little real, even a little like, you know, little funny, kind of match the voice of your book. I think sometimes we think of it like a very formal letter, and it doesn't have to be that formal. It's not a cover letter for a job. You know, you can get a little kind of quirky with it. And then where you can find me online is at Alicia Books at Twitter or Instagram, and you can find Amy at I think it's Amy Lee Books, Amy Lea Books, I believe. But I'm sorry, I don't have that memorized.
Are we going in order? Because I'm not ready.
Okay. Rochelle. Okay, Rochelle's ready.
One word, simple, show me the stakes. Too many query letters don't have high enough, clear enough stakes. And in order to be invested, I don't care how much I love your character, if you don't show me what's at risk, I'm not going to be grabbed by it. And what was the other part of that question?
So we can find you online.
Twitter is the easiest part. It's Rochelle_Karina. That's the easiest place to find me. From there, you can find me everywhere else.
Okay, I'm ready now. That was a really good tip about stakes, and it helped me remember what my go-to tip is, which I don't know why I didn't remember this, but be specific. A lot of queries are very vague because I think writers are holding on to things. They feel like, I don't want to reveal my twists, or like, I don't really want to reveal this detail because then you won't get the full experience. But be specific, especially with your inciting incident. I mean, really tell us what your story is, because the specifics to your story are is what is going to hook a mentor, a reader, an agent, whoever is reading your query. And to find me online, I'm on Twitter at Mick_Domenici, and also on Instagram at Michella Writes.
Dang, I knew I should have jumped in earlier. But like, again, that's why that shows why that it's excellent advice. It's be, you know, like, who is your character? What's at stake? Be succinct and be specific, right? Like as Michella said, so many are like, they must do this thing or else ... And you're just like, I don't know what that means. What, like, why should I care? And again, like, it's yes, you're not supposed to spoil things, but like, there's such a thing as like holding too much back. You're keeping your cards too close to your chest. Again, if you like, it's really hard, but like, if you give it to your friends, it's like, why would I care about this story? Like, ask them, like, what is there that will grab somebody? And if you're just like, I don't know, then you worked harder to make it again. And also, like, a lot of people are like, oh, if I keep it vague, it's more like universal. No, be specific. Why are you the one telling this particular story? Why does this particular story have to be told this particular way? So yeah, character driven, stakes, succinct, specific.
This is the advantage or disadvantage of going last. I have nothing to add beyond what anybody else has said. There's some fantastic tips there, and I would 100% agree with all of them. Before I talk about where you could find me online, can I just say how weirdly amazing it is that both Rochelle and I independently showed up with shirts that said equality on them? Did we plan that? That's pretty good. Right, where you can find me online, I'm jacksonfordauthor.com. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram at realjacksonford.
Oh, sorry. I forgot to say, online, I'm at MPM, so my initials, MPM, the writer. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm almost never on Facebook, but like, it's the same.
All right. Okay. Thank you all so much for coming and answering today's questions. I put all of their Twitter handles, links actually to their Twitter accounts in the chat, so you can go from there. That's just the easiest for me to find. That's why I included those links. And we're actually I'm going to put a little placeholder image of a screen while we switch everyone out, and also while I run and get water. So if y'all will give me 1 minute to refill my water. And for the 5 of you, if you could log out so we can have the 5th person log in, that would be great. And yeah, we'll be right back in just a minute. All right. Hello, everyone. We're going to add on the mentors who are waiting in the wings. So heads up, you're going to appear on screen in just a second. I like to give you a little heads up so it's not a complete surprise.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hello.
Oh, good. Yeah, good.
All right.
I was afraid.
All right. Hello, everyone. Just a couple reminders. If you don't know what Pitch Wars is, if you have a question about, kind of procedural questions, you can go to pitchwars.org and most of those questions will be answered there. And we're going to just go ahead and jump right in. I'm going to have each of the mentors introduce themselves. If you could tell us a little about you, your writing, and then also your history, if any, with Pitch Wars. So we'll start with Clay.
All right, sounds great. So I'm Clay Harmon. I'm represented by Joshua Bilmes of Jabberwocky Literary Agency, and my debut novel comes out next year on April 26th, and it's an epic fantasy novel called Flames of Mira.
All right, Lynn.
All right, can you hear me? Okay. I'm Lynn Liao Butler, and I write multicultural book fiction, and my debut, The Tiger Mom's Tale, just came out on July 6th, so it's really new. And my second book is coming out in February of next year, so 5 more months. But I also write thriller and suspense and YA, so kind of a wide variety. This is my second year mentoring for Pitch Wars, and I'm really excited to see what hits my inbox.
All right. We can go around the clock, so we'll go with Mary.
Hi. Okay, so I'm Mary Keliikoa, and I write the P.I. Kelly Pruitt mystery series. My debut, Derailed, was actually a 2016 Pitch Wars novel, and my mentors were Sarah Henning and Kelly Garrett. And it's been award nominated this last year, so it's been a very fun year. And my second book came out this year, and it has one more book in the series. So, and clearly from what I write, I'm a mystery person, so I'll be looking and excited for Wishlist on that.
All right. Elle.
Hi, I'm Elle Montez. I write adult science fiction, very space-based. I love everything science fiction, though. I am currently represented by Stephanie Hansen of Metamorphosis Literary Agency, and we are currently on submission with my 2018 Pitch Wars submission, Arc 10. So really excited to see what comes up. I love working with Stephanie. I love just being part of the Pitch Wars community, and I hope to keep writing in adult. I do have a lot of other side projects that are more in magical realism and kind of talking about the Latinx experience.
All right, J.A., don't be afraid to let your kitty shine.
Sorry, he's a Burman, and apparently they are the cuddliest cat, and he can detect when webcams turn on.
Mine sat on my shoulder earlier, so you're good.
I'm Joe. I go by J. Crawford because when my wife, when we started dating, she tried to Google me, and she was really mad because she couldn't find any dirt on me because my name is too generic. And I thought I better do something about that if I ever get picked up by anybody, because no one will be able to find me author-wise. So I go by J. Crawford. I was a mentee in 2018 under the wonderful Gigi Pandian. Under Lock and Skeleton Key is out next March, so get ready for that, please. I'm very excited. And out of Pitch Wars, I cold queried and signed with Lucien Diver of the Night Agency. My debut novel, Joe Brandon's Near Death, Over This Shoulder, came out last month. So very exciting. It's now gone to series. And the next one is about someone who starts murdering the actors who play superheroes on screen. So that's me, and I will be helping people out with their mystery, thriller, and fantasy novels this time around. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. So Joe was there in the pre-show, so he heard y'all are welcome to talk about your wish list today. We originally scheduled this so that you could talk about your wish list, and then the different things happened where we had to delay them. So feel free to mention any wish list things today. It's like a little sneak peek, but we won't be like answering questions like what is your wish list, because you'll just have to wait till 10 p.m. for that. All right. So we have questions. We're still looking at questions from 12 p.m. That's where we are in our queue. So we'll go ahead and dive right in. Nicole asked, can you give some beginner advice, re the most important things to look out for in a pitch letter? Yeah, go ahead.
So I think what she means is by a query type letter.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so people really stress about these, but remember, we're writers, so we are looking at it from more of a writer perspective. And I think I just want to get the bearings on the parameters of the story, so I can get into the pages, because that's what I'm more interested in. But as someone who wants to query, you do have to sort of learn the secret language of querying, because querying is also about demonstrating to an agent that you understand the industry a little bit. You understand where your book fits. You sort of know the language. It demonstrates expertise. So I would definitely look into all the beautiful free resources online that will start to teach you the secret language. And you can always ask me on Twitter, and I'll point you in directions.
Anybody else?
I can go. I don't know how helpful this is to some people, but making sure that whoever you're submitting to, whether that's an agent or a mentor, that they actually represent or are looking for the thing that you write. When it comes to querying agents, you'd be surprised how many people get the very basic rules wrong. And so as long as you do your due diligence, that will put you far ahead of the majority of people that query. As far as pitch wars in particular, if you're talking about like a pitch letter to like me, for instance, or I can't speak for other people, but I try not to take the pitch letter itself too seriously. I personally like to look at the pages themselves, because I feel like I get a lot more out of that. So, yeah.
That's not to say don't work on your query letter, though, because we do get some submissions every year that are like, read my pages, and that's the query letter. Like, don't do that.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, I think that besides, just following the query outline that Jay mentioned, don't forget to tell us what the story's about. I got so many last year that I had no idea what the story was. It was just like, this is the name of my book, and it follows the journey of something. And I was like, well, we need the stakes, the conflict, what would happen if the MC does not get whatever they are trying to get. So just make it so that we understand what the story is and that we want to read it. And then one other thing, very important, is like, don't see, when you are querying agents, don't CC like 99 agents on one, personalize it, like put their names on it, but don't do what I did. When I read personalize, I thought they meant like, 'cause I'm a personal trainer. So I said to somebody, I was like, I hope you get all hot and sweaty when you read my book and it makes your heart race, and don't be creepy. It's like, I had no idea. And I sent letters out like that. And now I just cringe every time. So do your research, like Jay said.
I'm trying, just piggybacking off of what Lynn said, I'm trying to remember like what I did as a baby writer trying to like go into query land. And I think one of the things that I didn't think of the most was the stakes. Like, I wanted people to love my characters and love my world building as much as I loved it. And I kind of forgot how important the stakes are, which is what grabs people who don't know anything about your world building or don't know anything about your characters from a query. So I think focus on those stakes. Like, what is it that's going to draw someone who's never read your book before into the, want to make them want to read it? Like, just keep remembering, like, a pitch is, you've only got so many words to get people to need it in their hands. Like, what could you say to make sure that people get that excitement? And it's, it might not always be in the characters. It might not always be in the backstory. That's a lot of things that you have to build on. So in the fewest amount of words, how can you make us need this?
Yeah, and I would add too that remember that this is a business relationship when you are querying your agent. And so things like, you always want to keep it very professional, very, not adding too much, like you have to have this or you're a dumb agent or, things like that. You just want to keep it very professional. And so what I'll be looking for also is that you do send a pitch that is, has a professional side to it, and that you keep it to a certain, tell me about the story, tell me about the stakes. Don't tell me I have to have you, or, or else, or that, you know what I mean? So you, like Lynn said, no creepiness, you know, like you don't want those types of things, you know, just keep it professional. Keeping in mind you're interviewing in some ways, just like they're interviewing for you, you're doing the same, and it all speaks on the page. So you want to show the agent that you understand it's a business as well.
All right. We have a question from Izzy. I'm going to generalize a little bit when I ask it, though. And so the question is, do you have any tips for someone who is writing a query letter for a story that is more focused on character than plot? She doesn't want to mislead anyone into thinking there's a lot of action, but also doesn't want the query to be overlooked.
I mean, well, you can go first.
I know I'm going to say a word people don't want to hear right now, but this is where good comps help you a lot, because it will help the agent understand what the story compares to and where it fits. That's my answer.
That's a good tip, actually. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And my answer kind of goes back what I forget who mentioned it with the previous question, but just the stakes. If you talk about the stakes, you know, that could be stakes from a plot sense. It could be stakes from a character sense. If you talk about what's at stake for the character, I think it could do well to show how much of the story is focused on character.
Yeah, because there's many stories that are character driven rather than plot driven. So you can still show the stakes and the conflict of that character and what happens if the character doesn't get what they want. So as long as that's clear in there, I don't think it would hurt you.
Yeah.
Or even if it's, you know, character driven in a really interesting world. So what is the one unique thing about this character that's going to make it stand out from all the other characters? So I think maybe highlight some of those really unique characteristics, or if there's a unique characteristic about the world that they're living in, just, you know, comps I think is going to be great for that, but also highlighting, you know, the unique aspects.
Yeah, when I teach query letter classes, one of the formats I do is 4 questions. What does the main character want? Or sorry, who is the main character? And like who they are, not like what their name is. What do they want? What stands in the way of them getting what they want? And what happens if they don't get what they want? If you answer those questions, you should be good. All right. Debbie asked, how many revision passes do mentees get through during the pitch wars process? How many of mentors will tackle structural revisions, adding major amounts of new material, doing major cuts? So I will just say, our mentors are required to do 1 edit, and then they are required to, again, read the manuscript a second time. That doesn't mean they have to do a second edit. It means they have to read it before they submit it. And also it will vary widely, like very, very widely. So like some people rewrite their entire book and some people do like minor edits. So, but if y'all want to jump in and add anything there.
Well, I would say that, you know, definitely, of course, the first pass, and then what the manuscript needs. If we need to break it down by scenes, and I'm starting to look at the first scene, second scene, third scene, as you're writing, as you're going through, it's really going to depend on where the manuscript is, where we start and where we're headed. And then if we need another pass, we'll get it done. I mean, the point is to get a good manuscript at the end of the day. So that's where I'm going to be very flexible to see what's needed.
And I completely agree. And I think a lot of it has to do with logistics, like time. So I know when I was a mentee back in 2018, my mentors, I think, did more than 2 passes at my manuscript, because if I was able to turn my edits around really quickly, then I think the full thing they read twice, and then we would chunk it up, kind of like what was said earlier, that we would be able to focus on smaller chapters, but only if we were able to get things turned around in time. So it really depends on the relationship you've built with your mentor, as well as how much you are able to dedicate time to getting revisions turned around quickly.
Yeah, I agree with you. Last year, I picked a mentee that her submission was only, I think it was like 63,000 words, which is really not enough. But I loved her voice and her storyline so much that I took her on, and I got to know her a little bit to see if she was the kind of person who could work fast, because you would have to add that many words. So we did do huge like adding and structural changes, and she works as fast as I did. So it really depends on whoever, the mentee is and the mentor, how their style working. So we happened to work very fast. So I think we went through like 3 rounds, but that's not typical. I just want to point that out. It's like, mentors are only supposed to do 1. We just happened to do that because both of us worked so fast that we were like back and forth. So it really depends on the mentor, the mentee, how much work, what the manuscript is. And
all right. I will say, because we mentioned a couple of times, like if you can work fast, then, you get to do more work. I will say, like, just make sure you're taking care of your mental health, make sure you're taking care of your health. Don't try to push through and burn out because you want to get more out of it. Your health, your mental health is the most important thing. So, okay. Krista asked, when writing internal thoughts in deep first person point of view, should italicized thoughts be in a separate paragraph? Honestly, I wouldn't even italicize direct thoughts in first person. I would italicize them in third person, but not first person. I don't know if y'all have any input on that.
I mean, I've got some insight because my debut is written in first person, and I do. There are very few instances where I italicize direct thoughts. It's very rare because it's not as necessary in the first person point of view. But what I personally do is I just include it with the rest of the paragraph. I don't make it its own paragraph because the fact that it's italicized already indicates that it's internal thought.
I also write in first person. I will say that I don't italicize either, but I noticed on my last go around with my editor at my publisher, she kept italicizing some internal thoughts, and I was like, oh, okay. So I went back and of course did what she asked for it. So I don't know, maybe it's a preference, but generally I don't either, not in first person.
Yeah, I wrote the first 2 books in third person, and I did italicize internal thought, and I did it within the paragraph. So I didn't do a separate paragraph, and my copy editors and whatever kept it that way. So.
All right, we had a similar question with the last batch of mentors, but since we have new mentors, we'll ask it again. What outside stuff is worth putting in our introductions to the mentors? I self-publish short stories and webcomic. Is it worth mentioning it, or just leave it to the book?
I mean, I think it's worth mentioning, just coming from I love talking about platform and branding. If you have short stories to publish, I think that's relevant information. If I've also heard, if you have a job that might create insight into the world that you're creating. So if you're in science fiction and you also are actually a scientist, like put that, I think, in the query, because that makes a lot of sense and shows your mentor or your agent that you have good connections to facts and the, what's happening in the world right now with this. Short stories, I think, are great. I also have a podcast, and I always like to mention that as well, because that shows agents that, you are a part of a larger community. You might have a lot of insight on how to, market yourself. And that also is important from the business side of things.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I'm always really impressed by people that have, say, like a STEM background, and then they also like to write fiction on the side. I've always thought that was really cool. So even if it doesn't necessarily apply to the story that you're writing, me personally, I love seeing that stuff. I think it's really cool. So.
Yeah, and I've always was always told that if it contributes to your book, like why you are the person to write this book, you should include it. And also, if you just have something interesting, you can put it at the end, like whether, if you have some sort of interesting career, you can always include a little bit so that they get to know you. But I wouldn't do like an entire paragraph, just, maybe like a one-liner. So it just really depends on you. And I like your dog, Mary.
I know. Although Mary, I'm a huge believer in the paranormal. I was so scared for a second there, like what's happening?
Well, she has a mind of her own, and she just pushed it open. Whoops, sorry.
All right. I just froze for a second. So this reminds me that if I disappear from this, we're going to say, Clay, you're in charge. So just a heads up on that. All right. So Al asked, or AI, I'm not sure, what should guide my identification of my novel genre when it could fall into different ones? Is there a magical formula? Don't we wish?
Okay, I have a confession to make. I didn't know what a thriller was, so when I first submitted to Pitch Wars, I just put mystery/thriller, and figured people who knew more than I did would just tell me, and it turns out it's a mystery. So fantastic! If you can get a solid definition on this, I have read like 10 definitions of mystery versus thriller, and it always just right over my head. So you should decide. Well, I shouldn't say you should. I would say which you feel dominates, and then you could say, like, for example, I wrote a murder mystery set in the Shire, and it's an Agatha Christie style fantasy. And you would decide which of those two elements you felt worked best. I did not write that, by the way, but I would love to read that.
Yeah, I would too. Kind of piggybacking off of that, I think that's great advice, especially if you feel that you don't know which genre yours falls more heavily into. This is a great opportunity to maybe connect with a mentor on that, saying, it's a romance set in space. Not sure if it's more sci-fi or more romance. And then that's something for your mentors to help you with too. If you do know that it leans more toward one side or the other, that's also great, saying it's sci-fi with heavy elements of mystery or thriller.
Yeah, and it helps to have like a critique group or critique partners or even beta readers who can, even if they don't read your whole thing, at least read your synopsis or your pitch and a first few chapters, and they can help you. Because sometimes as the writer, you don't really see it. And then I just wrote what I thought was women's fiction. And then I had 3 of my author friends read it, and they're like, this is not women's fiction, this is thriller. There's stalking, there's murder, there's people dying right and left. And I was like, oh, you're right. So it helps to have other eyes on it, because you might think you're writing something and other people are like, no, you're not. So find some friends.
Yes. And I struggle with that even myself. I mean, because like in mystery is suspense. I mean, it can cross genres so easily. And so where it lands. So I think that's part of the process of the pitch wars, right? Is we go through, we land it where it needs to go. So.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, my cat was trying to get my headphones, so I got a little distracted. I will say that on the form, you do have to choose one genre, and that is pretty much only for statistical purposes. People want statistics on what genres are submitted, but then they'll put like, oh, it's a mystery with paranormal elements and also some romance and historical flashbacks. And like, I can't go through 4,000 entries and decide what your genre is, right? So that's the main reason why we have a drop-down list for genres. So you're free to delve in a little bit more in the actual text of the query letter for your genre. So feel free to do that. That's totally fine. And then also, I think it's better, like if you're not really sure, it's for pitch wars, at least, it's better to go a little broad. Like it's fine saying mystery thriller, Joe, if you're not exactly sure, because that at least just gives someone an idea of where you are at. And then if they choose to mentor you, they may help you drill down. And even like I've done some query critiques where I've been like, I don't think that's the right genre for you based on your story and your synopsis. So someone may be able to help you with that.
Just for clarification,
yeah.
I'm guessing that maybe the person asked that question because they thought, the mentors are going to see which genre you clicked off, and they're going to read the query letter and be like, oh, that's not what they picked at all. I believe that mentors don't see that specific thing, and that, like you said, is just for statistical purposes. And so you have the flexibility of that query letter to show that there's this blend of genres.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll see it. The mentors will see it, but okay. Like most mentors will tell you, like they don't even read that part. Like they just go straight to the query letter, straight to the pages. They don't even read kind of like the form info. All right. Yes, we should. I'm not putting that on screen because it could be a trigger for some people, but yes, you should put trigger warnings in your query if you have particularly violent things or sexual violence, or maybe some other things that could cause some trigger. Okay. If I've gotten a sensitivity read for my manuscript, is it good to mention it in the query?
I mean, mean, I feel like it's not like imperative information. It's something that you could probably talk to with your, it might be worth mentioning if it's a really, I think it could be something that seems problematic, or, I mean, that's a really hard question, actually. I don't think it would take away from a query, but I mean, if you're limited to so many words, is that, the most important information you want? Oh, Lynn, you're muted.
Sorry, I thought you guys could hear me. It's not going to make or break. Oh, your cat's on your shoulder. It's not going to make or break my decision whether or not I want to see more pages. If the content of your query letter grabs me, that's not something that is a make or break. So
I agree. Same with Lynn. It doesn't make or break the query for me.
All right. Eden, I'm just going to answer Eden's question real quick. Where do you find Mentor Wishlist? They will be published at 10 p.m. Eastern tonight. So you can find, if you go to pitchwars.org at 10 p.m., you'll be able to find a list of all of them. We'll also be tweeting it out as well. So keep an eye out for that. For submissions to this contest, should we have headers on our manuscript pages? You actually copy and paste your pages into a form. So feel free to leave out any headers or whatever. You can put like chapter 1 in plain text if you want, but and chapter 2 if it's short chapters, All right. Let's see. I'm kind of like scrolling down. There's a lot of comments here. This is right, I think, when there's a lot of conversation going on. So, okay. New adult. We talked about new adult in the last thing, so just a heads up. Okay, this is when we switch mentors. So we're now into the next set. Okay. Any advice for POC own voices writers when we query?
Well, since I'm one, I guess I could kind of answer that. It's up to you. If you want the agent to know that you are POC, sometimes they can tell by your name, but sometimes they can't because, I married a white person, and so I have a Butler's last name, but I kept my maiden name because I did want people to know. I did mention at the end of my query letter that I was born in Taiwan and grew up here because it was relevant to my book, and it showed them that I was qualified, well, not qualified, but I am writing from my experience and not, from somebody else's. So it really depends on you. I've spoken to a lot of writers who are just starting out who wanted to hide the fact that they are POC, and that's okay too. They kept feeling that it would hinder them to show that. But I'm just like, in this day and age, it's about diversity. Like, people are trying to break out of that it's only a white world. So I think, for me personally, I believe it's important to show your whatever group you are. So if you're comfortable, go ahead. If you're not, you can leave it out and let the agent, if they're interested, like eventually talk to you about how you want to handle that. But I felt it was very important. So.
Yeah, Lynn, I agree completely. I think it's to everyone and their own comfort level of how much they want to share, especially coming from, if we are writing from our own experiences and, gaining insight from the lives that we've lived as POC. I think it's important maybe to include it. If you do want to include it, there is that little bio section at the bottom of your query saying like, I am this writer and so forth, like, or, most of the time I say I am a Mexican-American writer who has, been challenged in this area, which has developed my understanding of this. So for some of my queries, I have put that, but if it's not relevant to the manuscript that I was pitching, then I just kind of left it out. But of course, my name also indicates, there is like Latinx, this is a Latinx person. And so I would say it really depends on your comfort level. If your own experiences are driving the character and the narrative of the story, I think it would speak for itself. But also, I think there's been a big new question whether naming something own voices is more problematic than it is good for querying right now, because own voices has really changed in the last couple of years. So I would definitely recommend doing research on that and seeing if you feel that own voices is something that you would want to put into your query letter.
All right. I have particularly spoken to a lot of like queer authors who have been trying to decide if they want to claim own voices with, all the conversation that's been happening around it recently. And a lot of them felt like when We Need Diverse Books said they weren't going to use it anymore, that meant that they weren't allowed to use it anymore, that people would be mad if they used it. And that's not true at all. It's a personal decision for you. So don't feel like you're not allowed to use it. All right. This is a good question. Tasha, how do you guys feel about mentees mentioning their perceived manuscript strengths and weaknesses in their submission package?
That's actually one of the questions I ask when I request manuscripts. If I'm going to request something from someone, I tend to ask about 6 questions because I want to get to know their style. I want to know, how they are going to be to work with. And one of my questions is, what do you think your manuscript strengths and weaknesses are? So for me, it's totally fine, but it's, again, depends on the mentor.
Do you like it when they put it in their, because I never thought about this, but do you like it when they put it in their query, or do you think that's like a different conversation for?
Is that when they say submission package, do they mean just in?
I think it's specifically about pitch wars. Yeah.
About
the
pitches,
query.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's supposed to be only a certain amount of words, right? So if you're gonna not waste it, but if it's not going to be enough to tell us about the story, then probably not.
Yeah, I was going to. Go ahead. Oh, I was going to say that's going to be one of my questions as well. So, but I wouldn't waste words necessarily if you are limited on your query. Tell us about your story, and then we're going to, if we're interested, we're going to get to know you on that front. So,
yeah, I think it could be a good thing because it implies self-awareness. I know, like me personally, when I first started writing, I was an ego writer. I thought I was a lot better than I really was. And so talking about your strengths and weaknesses shows that, I've put thought into this. I don't think I'm, the next big author or whatever. And I want to work with someone who can help me make my strengths even stronger or help with my weaknesses. So.
I think perceived is the key word here, because that's only our self-interpretation, and you don't really know, what those are. And I think that is querying. I had a writer once tell me when I was vetting a query letter to go out, they said to me, a query is first date material. Don't put second date information in your query letter. Strengths and weaknesses is second date material. So I would probably just leave that out.
That's a good way to put that.
That was in response to me mentioning I had written 3 other books before this. And the author said, no. That is second date material. First date material is this book and this book only. Don't mention that you've written other books. The next question that's going to come up is, well, why didn't they make it?
Yeah, I think strengths and weaknesses are more applicable for like pitch wars, where it's expected that you're going to work with someone to make your manuscript better. Whereas with querying an agent, they're going to see for themselves what your strengths and weaknesses are. That's not something you need to include.
Good point.
Yeah, on the one hand, it can kind of backfire because if you say this is the strength of my manuscript and this is the weakness of my manuscript, and the mentor disagrees with you, then it's probably not going to be a good match. But on the other hand, if it's something you're like, I specifically want to work on strengthening this in my manuscript, and if the mentor doesn't agree with you and you don't want to work with them if they don't agree with you, then that might be a positive for you. So it's kind of like depends on your situation. Like pretty much every answer could be like, well, it depends. All right. I'm going to ask this question and then I'm going to head off screen for just a minute because my cat has dug her claws into my legs and I think she needs food. So Danny asks, what inspired you to be a mentor for Pitch Wars? Go for it.
So I am going to be honest here because I know this happens with me. Pitch Wars was the first time somebody showed any value in my work. Like, it's the only validation I ever got as an author really before that, when my mentor, who, if she ever needs a kidney, she's going to get one. She made me believe in myself. She made me feel like I wasn't writing into this abyss and no one was listening. And the courting process was pretty brutal for me because I'm a thin-skinned person. And it just created a tremendous amount of empathy in me. And I felt like I have to repay this debt. If I don't put in the work that was put into me, I'm never going to feel right with myself. So I'm super excited to work hard for somebody the way that Gigi Pandian worked for me in 2018.
I can go next. So Pitch Wars for me was a step into a different direction. I got my start on Wattpad, and I absolutely love Wattpad and the community there. And I joined a lot of book clubs, which were all of us getting together and workshopping each other's chapters that were already posted. And it was so much fun. And I was already online, and that's how I heard of Pitch Wars. And it was such an incredible experience. Like, I feel like it was leveling up. And once I leveled up and had this amazing experience with my mentors, Lee and Marty from 2018, I love the editing process, and I love the workshopping process, and I love how collaborative it can be. And so my co-mentor, Nancy Schwartz, and I really have been jiving on how we present information to people. And it's exciting because this whole thing has been an incredible community booster and community experience. And I think that's why I want to continue with Pitch Wars, is because I genuinely missed the community after I left in 2018. I was never really gone, but I wasn't involved as I could be. So coming back in 2021 is so exciting for me because it's being back in it, growing the community, helping the community, being part of someone else's journey. And that's really exciting.
And I'm speaking as someone who was not picked as a mentee. So I did apply in I think it was 2018. And all four of the mentors I submitted to actually requested a full. So I was all excited, thinking, but I didn't end up getting picked. But all four of them were so like helpful and encouraged me. They sent me feedback, and then like stayed in touch with me and told me, we think that this is ready to query. You just need to do a little, and gave me feedback. And I actually signed with an agent before the Pitch Wars showcase that year. So, and then they stayed in touch with me for a long time. And one of them has said, when your book gets published, I will blurb your book. And she did. So for me, even though I didn't get picked, I've made these friendships that were so valuable, because you always need someone who's ahead of you to just kind of help you, because publishing is so hard. There's so much waiting, so much rejection, like at every single level, and it only gets worse. So to have these people there to guide me was what kept me sane. And that's why last year I decided to do the same for other people. And I am still very much in touch with my mentee from last year, and also another writer who, even though I didn't pick her, I just stay in touch with her and kind of guided her, and she signed with an agent too. So that's why I want to give back and kind of pass it forward.
I was going to say that I think my story is a lot similar to Joe's, where I had been writing I was a mentee in 2016, and my mentor was Judy Lauren. And I felt like she was the first person outside of my friends and family who really loved my story enough to want to work with it. And the feeling how that made me feel was just, it's hard to describe. It was like when I signed with my agent, it was really amazing. And then that was just the start. Meeting all of the people in the Pitch Wars community and making so many friends. And then when like the showcase came around, I was in one of those boats where I didn't get very many requests. I didn't sign with an agent or anything like that. I signed out of cold querying after the fact. And despite that, I would recommend Pitch Wars as much as I can, because the showcase wasn't what made it so great. It was the community that I became a part of, and all the people I got to meet, and just having someone to work with. And knowing that, and then having the opportunity to submit or to apply as a mentor, I just knew that I had to do what Judy did for me. And this is my second year mentoring, and last year, I'm so happy I did it. It was a ton of work, but it was so fulfilling that I love doing it. And it's great. I love it.
So when I came back in and applied in 2016, I'd actually taken 8 years off of writing. So I had written my Pitch Wars novel back in 1999 and then stopped for actually 15 years, actually not 8 years, 15 years. And then when I came back, I turned 50 and I was like, everything I knew about writing was like different. Like Twitter, there's Twitter. Where did Twitter come from? I mean, like, okay, I'm older. I have 10 grandchildren, so I just didn't know about it. So I found Twitter and I found Pitch Wars and I was like, wow, okay. And then Kelly Garrett and Sarah Henning picked me. And like what's been said, I was like, wow, I don't suck. And really, you like this manuscript? And it gave me such confidence right in the beginning. And having that one person believe in me or two people believe in me at that time made all the difference in my trajectory, in how I was going to continue to write. And I also only had a few requests during the Pitch Wars showcase, and I did not get my agent directly through the Pitch Wars showcase. In fact, I went on to get 100 rejections on Derailed, and it would take another little bit of rewrites and before I finally signed and finally got the book deal. So I know all about rejection, and I can cheerlead you through all of that and make you walk you back from the cliff, but I wanted to pay it forward, really, at the end of the day. But I also wanted to spend a little time getting to know my craft even better so that I really felt like I had something to contribute. And that's why this is my first year to mentor. And I'm excited. So.
Wait, am I the only one here that wasn't a past mentee? Yeah. That's so interesting.
Well, I wasn't, but I was a mentor in 2012 when it started. So yeah, Brenda says all the time, she's like, I really wish I could have been a mentee. Like Brenda, the founder of Pitch Wars. All right. What process will you use to sort through your submissions, and how would you describe your mentorship style? Two big but important questions.
Well, so I made a big mistake last year. I did not narrow down my my categories. I was like, I'm open to everything, memoirs, dark, light, whatever. And I think I got like over 450 submissions or something. And I was cross-eyed by like the end of like the first. And I thought I was going to be able to just go through them and decide. I ended up having to get someone to help me. So she started at one end, I started the other. I told her what I was looking for and, narrowed it that way. But this year I'm narrowing my categories, and I'm going to, I have an idea of what I'm looking for. And for me, it's voice. It's all about the voice for me. If you can draw me into your story, I don't care if it's light, dark, whatever. I just want to be inside the character, knowing, what's going on. So for me, that's what I'm going to be looking through. So I usually like to read the first page maybe, and then go back to the query to see if it hooks me, and take it from there. But that's how I usually sort through them. And then I start with like a maybe, yes, no pile, and then I'll go back and then go through them again. And then my mentorship style, I am very hands-on. I don't sugarcoat things, but I'm not mean. I would never be mean to you. But even though I tell you something, it doesn't mean that you have to take my word. Like if you're not open to it, I would never make you change something. I would just give you, my idea of why I think you should change this, add this, delete this. And I'm hoping to find a mentee that is open to suggestions, that's not going to cry every time I tell them, I don't think this is working, who's, will take my suggestions and then decide if it works for them. So somebody who's open-minded. I am there all the time whenever you can reach me. I will respond when I can if I'm not on deadline, but I'm pretty accessible. So.
I think my process will be similar to how it was last year. I was also a mentor that picked way too many categories to accept than I probably should have. I think I had like almost 300 submissions or something like that, and I didn't have a slush reader or anything like that. So, but I found a process that worked really well. I read probably the first few pages and then went back to the query, and then I flagged the ones to go back a second time to review. And then that's when I would go, during that second time, I would pick the ones that I would request more from. As far as mentorship style, I'm obsessed with why. Like, why do I do this? Why do I do that? So if I'm offering feedback, I'll often over explain my thought process or why I feel a certain way that I do. But at the same time, I want to emphasize that, you know, this is your story. I'm just helping you develop it further. If there's something that you want to hold on to, you know, I'm totally fine with that. It's, you know, mostly just shepherding you and giving feedback where I can.
I think Nancy and I, as co-mentors, already we narrowed it down. So we, on our wish list, are accepting space, only space, nothing but space stories. So if anybody has something that takes place in outer space or on another planet, that's ours. So that's the first way to narrow it down for us. But the second thing I think we're going to be looking for is, I know for me personally, I'm not sure about Nancy, but this is something we're going to talk about. I like to pass over everything in two hats. One pass through is going to be like, am I enjoying this as a reader? And just, you know, turn off that critical brain and then go back around. And, you know, if it's something that that I found enjoyment in, because I, as a reader, love finding things that are exciting, and then go through, you know, as the critical brain part turned on, is there something I can do to help this? And, you know, is there a way that I can make this better? Is there something that I could see that has potential? So I think what this question asker was really may have been also looking for is, you know, what can we suggest maybe to help them understand how they can get through that process too? And I think that's just, you know, we're all looking for completely different things. That's such a hard question to ask too.
Yes, since this is my first year, I will be kind of like being flexible in how I'll be going through it. But, you know, I do have a narrow lane, mystery, suspense, you know, thriller, crime. It's very narrow. I know what I'm good at, and that's where I'm going to stay right there. So you know, everything that comes through, I will be looking at. And if it hooks me, voice is going to be huge. We can fix plot issues and that type of thing. But I need to know that I can relate to the character on some level. They don't even have to be likable, but I have to, you know, be hooked into them. And then mentorship style, you know, we're just going to go over and just talk about everything, right? The why of the story, the how of the story, how we can continue to make it better all the way through. And I'll be there for you, obviously, all the way. So, and I'm very hands-on, and you'll be able to get a hold of me, and I have lots to say always, but it will always be your story at the end of the day. And I will support you in whatever decisions you go, because my job is just to be there at the end for you and to watch you fly. So I'll do whatever I can do to help you get there.
So this is my first year. So I assume my process is just going to be chaos as I try to, like, I have no idea. People are saying 450 submissions. What? I think the year that I got in as a mentee, my mentor had like 135, 450. So I guess crying. I think I'm going to do.
So, you know, narrow your categories. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. I might have messed up. So I'm making all the classic mistakes. That's good. Good to get that in out of the right out of the way. But no, I'm gonna give every submission the time it deserves and try to get a feeling of where this story, what it is. We want to find the heart of the story. Like, how can I make your story better? Not how would I tell your story? That's ridiculous. I need to figure out what the heart of the story is so we can work together. But basically, like, of course, I'm a crime writer, so you're gonna get a lot of similes. I'm gonna be like the guy outside the octagon, and you're fighting, and I'm just like, get him in the arm bar, stay on top, you know, like I'm just gonna coach you, and really depends on your comfort level. I like Clubhouse. I like to voice chat. I like to sprint with people. So it just depends on how much the mentee wants me around and when they're sick of me, I think.
All right. I had to unmute myself. All right, cool. Joe, my mentoring, or at least reading through submission style, is also chaos, like every year that I did it. So people are always like, you have Excel spreadsheets for everything, but when I'm going through my submissions, it's just like, let's just see what happens. Let's just let my gut lead the way. So I don't understand why. But yeah. All right. And I think it was the second year of Pitch Wars. I remember I had the most submissions of anyone, and that was 62. And so you can see like if you get 62 now, you're like, why did I get so few submissions? So yeah, it's definitely changed over the years. Okay, Jennifer asked, so are comps in a query a must then?
I would definitely say no. I think maybe I saw on the Pitch Wars feed or something from the previous chat about someone saying that a bad comp is worse than a no comp because it sets up false expectations. I think that's good to do. And then also, if you include a comp and the person hasn't read the book, then it doesn't really do anything. So it's definitely not a must, I would say.
You know, for me, when I was querying, I couldn't come up with comps for my books because there weren't that many Taiwanese American, stories out there. So instead of like trying to comp to a book, I said it's written in the vein of Liam Moriarty with an Asian twist or something like that. So, or I think something like Sex and the City meets The Biggest Loser, or with an Asian twist. So I think you can just use authors or like movies, as long as they're recent, just to get the idea, and then add whatever twist it is that you're writing from. If you can't find a book that matches, it'll give the agent a good idea of, oh, okay, I see.
So comps are, when I mentioned earlier in this chat, like the secret language of querying, comps are a way to express to an agent that you understand the current market and where your book fits on the shelf. So I had two queries. I had a query with comps and a query without comps. And then when I was addressing certain agents, I would see how much I felt they valued comps, and then I would act accordingly. Comps for us, for me, I don't care. But if my mentee wants, we're going to work hard on those. Because let's face it, when I describe something I love to somebody else, I compare it to something. I say, hey, it's like Knives Out on the Starship Enterprise. That's how we explain things to each other.
Can you send that to me?
Yeah, I know. I want that.
I was going to say, I'd read that book.
I'd read that.
My comp for my book was originally it's James Bond meets Galaxy Quest, because I felt like if you don't know what Galaxy Quest is, I don't want to know you anyway.
Mm.
All right.
I don't even know what that would look like, and I want it. James Bond and Galaxy Quest? I need that, I think.
Just I'll send it to you.
All right. This is a very specific question, but I think we can generalize it a little bit too. My memoir made it to Random House where it was praised but died when the senior editor had a similar property. Would that be something to include in the query letter when you're submitting to Pitch Wars? So do you want to hear about like things like this?
I think that's what the second date conversation is.
I will say a lot of the mentors will ask questions about the querying history of the manuscripts if they request. So
I think the important history is this published somewhere? Is this on Amazon or something like that?
Well, we don't allow those, so you would be
disqualified. Passes are painful. We all have, us that have been on submission have been through a lot of pain. Me particularly had this long process. But this is a bar conversation. I would not discuss who's passed on my manuscript or the journey to somebody else. It's just something to talk about later when we're all commiserating.
All right. Nicole has a question I can answer very quickly. Will the wish list be available 24/7 until the end of the submission period? Yes. They will actually be available until the end of the submission period at the very least. Usually they stay up even longer, but at that point you don't need them. All right. I see a lot of chatter, so I'm like trying to. Ooh. Okay, so I did post a YouTube video that I did for my library. It's just a 5-minute kind of like intro to comp titles. So if you're like, you don't even know what comp titles are, you don't know what you should use as comp titles, you can go find that. But Abe asked for your hottest takes on listing comp titles. If there's anything you want to add from what the previous question.
I love them, honestly. I think they excite me. You've got good comps. I mean, I love watching Pitman and just watching all those comps roll through because they're like, those get me excited for books. But then you're right, it is a huge letdown if you read that manuscript and it is absolutely nothing like the comps. But I think they're exciting. I love them. I could just sit there and read comps all day long in little Pitman pitches.
I think comps expose you how much of a reader you are right away. Like I can tell, like, oh, okay, this person doesn't read a lot of fantasy, but they wrote a fantasy book. That is my hot take.
Yeah, I don't know how hot a take this is, but if you're going to pick a comp title, make sure that it was published in the last 10 years. If it's within the last 5 years, even better. Don't be comping Lord of the Rings or anything like that, because that is only going to hurt you. I can promise that.
I have no hot takes because I didn't even understand the question, so I'm just gonna pass.
Yeah, I think comps are great if you can do them.
Yeah. And just doubling down on what you said, like I'm in young adult, so we still every now and then get a query letter that's like, this book is like Twilight. I'm like, is that the only young adult book you've ever heard of? Like, let's be honest. All right. Though there was like a funny little scene in New Girl about Nick's novel and Twilight. It was basically the zombie version of Twilight, and he had no idea. That was hilarious. Yeah.
Nick Miller is my author spirit animal.
Just chaos incarnate. All right. So we are out of time today. So if we could just finish off with each of you telling us your succinct top query letter tip. Just 2 or 3 sentences, and also where we can find you online. And as you're speaking, I'll put your Twitter links in the chat so people can find you. Oh, I'm Sarah Nicholas. I have been Sarah Nicholas. Anyway, I'm Sarah Nicholas. I am on the Pitch Wars board. I'm the agent liaison, and then I'm subbing in as social chair for now. And this is my YouTube channel, so I'm here. And also I'm on Twitter at Sarah Nicholas. And I have a show tonight, actually. I have a show called Pub Talk Live. And tonight, my guest, I'm so excited for my guest tonight. Like, I'm just thrilled. It's going to be Nina LaCour, who's one of my favorite authors of all time. And then Georgina Marie, who is one of my favorite audiobook narrators of all time. And she narrated some of Nina's books. And we're going to be talking about audiobook narration and writing and all kinds of stuff. So if you want to come back at 9 p.m., I'll be here. Well, I'll be in a different house, but I'll be here.
Very cool.
Clay.
So quick tip on querying. Don't include questions in your query letter. Oftentimes, those questions only have one answer to them, and it's a lot more obvious than you might think. And the intention behind including a question is you're trying to build intrigue, and there's much more interesting ways to build intrigue. So I would say avoid those. And then you can find me on Twitter at Clay Harmon, the Roman numeral 2, and my website is clayharmonauthor.com.
For me, I would love to see you in your query letter. So don't just be like a form letter, like somebody said before. I want to see your voice. I want to see your, if it's a funny book, I want the query to be funny. If it's like a dark book, I want to feel creeped out. So just put yourself and your book into that query letter. Try to get the same kind of voice that you have. And again, my biggest thing is voice. And you can find me at just Liao Butler everywhere. It's just website, Twitter. I'm even on TikTok. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm on TikTok.
Oh, I'm gonna follow you.
I am talking.
I love TikTok. Let's go around the clock. So we'll do Mary next.
So so show me your voice and show me what's at stake, and tell me what's going to happen if this character doesn't get they're after. And that's what I'm looking for. Just a good, show me a little bit of yourself as well. What Lynn said, if you have a personality, of course you have a personality. If your character has a certain quirk or whatever, or you have a certain perspective, put it in there. Don't be afraid. Just have some fun with it too. I mean, and MaryKeliikoa.com is my website. Mary Keliikoa author for Instagram and Facebook, and then Twitter, just Mary Keliikoa. So I'm everywhere except for TikTok.
I suck at queries. This is not my strong suit, so I'm not going to give anybody any advice because I need the advice still. Nancy, my co-mentor, is going to be like the query queen. I do suggest a resource, though, if you've ever heard of Query Shark. She is one of my favorite resources of all time for queries. So it's queryshark.blogspot, I think. Queryshark.blogspot.com. Go check out her website. She is an agent. She is ruthless. It is, I would never want to put myself on the end of one of her queries, but I definitely think like she's got some really great information for queries. You can find me LL Montez on Instagram, Twitter, Wattpad. I'm not on, book TikTok yet, but book talk, but I want to be. So maybe one day, Lynn, you got to show me I'm going to go look for you, Lynn, and all the book talk.
I don't think there's one formula for query letters, but I always felt that it was important to lead with whatever I felt was the strength of the book, whatever that was. Now that can change for any book, but you don't get a lot of time, not for us, but for agents, and you have to hook them fast. Me, I led with the hook of the book. I thought that was the strength. I am not big on the bookkeeping paragraphs. Please consider my book complete at 90,000 words. I mean, that tells an agent that you did a little research and you know what they rep. But figure out what your strength is and lead with that. And I know this seems tough to say in such a condensed format, but you have to bring excitement and voice into that letter somehow. You have to show them you're writing in the letter. So I'm sure if I work with you, we will be getting real deep into this because I tear this stuff apart. I think it's super important because your query forwards through your entire publishing journey. You will be leaning on it to describe your book for years and years and years. It's important stuff.
All right. Awesome. Thank you all so much for coming today and answering everyone's questions. Make sure you follow our mentors on Twitter. I posted all their Twitters in the chat. All of our mentors, all of our admin, everyone, all the way down is a volunteer for Pitch Wars. So we appreciate so much all the time that everyone puts in. And everyone stay safe. Wash your hands, wear a mask. See you next time. Bye, y'all.
Bye.